Hey guys, Socket here. I want to give a update on my Duration Poison Assassin. As you can see, we are still leveling it, but I've done a bit more fine-tuning with the character, with what I plan to do with the final character, and I've made a few more discoveries, which is actually making me feel a lot more confident about this. So for anyone who wants to know about the finer details, I recommend you watch my previous video where I go into the testing of the mechanics and a very in-depth look. But very briefly, I am using Puncture as my main skill. Puncture has the duration tag. Because it has the duration tag in there, anything which gives increased skill effect duration increases the effect of the bleed from Puncture. But because the Puncture has the duration tag, poisons applied by Puncture sort of double dip. So basically a poison applied by Puncture will be longer than a poison applied by, for example, Tornado Shot, because Tornado Shot doesn't have that duration tag built in there. If you don't believe me, refer back to my last video, test it yourself, get some skill duration somewhere in the tree, have a duration skill and non-duration skill go wild, and that's basically that. So as you can see, the skill effect quality, the quality more so is what I was trying to say, on Puncture gives an additional 20% increased duration. You can also pick up a Helm enchant from Ublab, which gives an additional 45% increased puncture duration. All of this increased puncture duration, if I am correct, which I'm fairly sure I am, basically reads as another 65% increased poison duration. The way that poison works is, sorry, there's some rattling going on my desk. That was triggering me. The way that poison duration works is that it has set intervals at which it will tick. The longer the poison is, the more damage output you get out. We also supplement this even further by altering the tree slightly to pick up increased skill effect duration here. I was previously umming and ahhing between Marauder Start and getting Potency of Will. I should have more than enough skill effect duration, considering I'm using a quality Puncture and I have the Puncture Helm enchant. If I decide to get super greedy with the damage, I will also pick up Potency of Will. However, I think I should be okay. One important thing to note about Potency of Will is all this extra skill effect duration not only is amazing DPS scaling with the way it interacts with our poison, but it's also very nice utility and defensive scaling. We do run Articum. This increases the chilled ground left behind by Articum, which is very nice defense and utility. We do run a Wither Totem setup. This will make my Wither Totem even more effective, which again is nice offense and defense. Wither, if you don't know, where is it in my links? Here we go. Base duration of 0.5 seconds. Again, the quality on Wither is increased duration. I just had this one lying around, but ideally you'd want a 20% one. Each application of Wither, up to 20 stacks, increases the chaos damage they take. So this is the initial chaos damage you hit them with and poison, and slows them. So stacking Wither is obviously pretty amazing. So the more skill effect duration, you know, the easier it is for your spell totem fast casting Wither setup to reach that 20 stacks, and the longer it will stay on 20 stacks. Also stuff like, where is it? Where's my Vaal Haste? Where's my Vaal Haste? There you go. Stuff like Vaal Haste will also end up with a really juicy duration. We will use increased duration linked in with our Vaal Haste, and it will get all the skill effect duration scaling in the tree. Assassin also gets an additional 30% increased skill effect duration if you've killed a maimed enemy recently. The way that we apply maim through this build, since Puncture is our main skill, we are always bleeding. We always apply bleeds to enemies. So there's a 50% chance whenever we hit an enemy we've already punctured to apply maim, and maim is a slow, so very nice defense in there. Also, Toxic Delivery gives 20% of fizz damage gained as extra chaos damage against bleeding enemies. So after our first initial hit with the Puncture, any additional hits after that does get another juicy bit of chaos damage on top. One important thing to note, we are not focusing on the bleed damage. We are not focusing on bleed damage at all. We get projectile scaling, we do get a little bit of physical scaling in the tree. This is not a bleed build, this is a poison build, which happens to have bleed, and the bleed helps proc our other effects. The only reason I am using Puncture as my main skill is for the duration tag. My other option was Ice Shot. Ice Shot also has the duration tag. It also has the AoE tag, which opens you up to different gems. It gives you the possibility of running Conk Effect, which is pretty interesting and something I will play around with. However, the quality on Ice Shot is cold damage, which isn't all that helpful to me. It also converts 40% of my physical over to cold, which reduces my poison somewhat because, you know, fizz damage does go into poison as well. It is a nice option for physical reflect maps rather. If I have issues with physical reflect, I will just swap in a Ice Shot, so I've got one of those leveling on the side. Also another thing, as far as I remember, the Helm enchants for Ice Shot don't give increased duration. I'm pretty sure it's something like damage. Let's double check. I'm pretty sure it's damage, radius, and then chilled ground duration, maybe? Let's double check. It's fairly important. Oh no, you can also get Ice Shot duration. That is very interesting. It's not quite as much. It's only 36%. But that does give Ice Shot another good advantage. Another nice thing about Ice Shot, ignoring the fact that it already has the chilled ground built in there, which is very nice defense, it has a much higher base damage. It goes up to 146%, whereas Puncture only goes up to like 120. And this will scale any base chaos damage we have on gear, of which we have a lot. We've borrowed 2 rings off of my old poison character, and I picked up this amulet. I put the flat chaos on there myself, but I picked up that base amulet for only 2C, which is frankly pretty amazing considering we need int. That gives a lot of int, 57 int. Flat accuracy is very nice in a crit build, gives some crit multi, which is very, very nice. Very high life, and then obviously the flat chaos on there. It has another open prefix. You could slam it. The ideal slam would be, you know, just slam Exalting High Flat Fizz on there. But otherwise, you know, it's something I'm not really going to bother doing. Maybe if this character lasts for a very long time late into the league and I've got a spare Exalt or 2 lying around, I'll throw it on there. But it really is not needed. Also, so quickly referring back to the skill tree, I was deciding between this way or this way. I've decided to approach this character how you would approach Explosive Arrow. If you remember again, last week I was struggling working out my links. I really wanted to use either a Comb's Heart or a Belly of the Beast in this build. Obviously, Comb's Heart is the preferred option as it just gives you more life. 500 flat life is obviously better than 40% maximum life. We do use rares for all of our slots. So we'll use the Snakebite Gloves. We need to get 1 more level here, which gives 70 flat life. And then every other piece just has rares. It's just rares with lots of flat life, flat life. We're not using a unique helm with no life on there. If you did want to use a particularly unique helm, because we're an assassin, we don't need the ridiculous amounts of crit from Rat's Nest. I'd recommend Star Conjures. Star Conjures has some attack speed. I'm going to do that trade because I need the currency. It gives some attack speed. It gives up to 100 flat life. Also gives some dex, I believe. And it gives a little bit of crit chance. You've just had my cat come in, so excuse any jingling and jangling. I'm not quite as broke as I look. I still have all of my explosive arrow gear. I still have a Combs. I've got multiple linked quill reins. I've got a lot of currency. I've got like linked up Cosprey as well. I've got like 4 or 5 characters, 85 plus, fully decked out in pretty GG gear. And I just haven't been selling the gear off because I like keeping my characters alive to map on. I want to go back and test something. So, yeah. The way that we're going to approach the new links now is Comb's Heart will be my end base. As I said, I'm approaching this like you would approach Explosive Arrow. Since we're using a unique bow and we're using Death's Opus. We're using Death's Opus, not Reach of the Council, because of the weapon swap. Reach of the Council is ridiculously expensive. For a crit build, which is scaling flat chaos the way I'm doing it, Death's Opus on pure single target, not using Barrage, this is important, not using Barrage, pure single target, Death's Opus does more damage because of the 150% global critical strike multiplier. It also has a perfectly rolled Death's Opus 7.5% crit chance versus the 6% crit chance of a Reach of the Council. You will have a much easier time crit capping your Death's Opus. You'll have a much easier time getting enough crit that you could drop the Diamond Flask if you're really lucky with the gear. That is obviously very nice utility and defense and offense when you consider the best in slot flask for this build. For the way I'm doing it, this is more damage then using a Reach of Cancel. This is also like 20C, and a Reach of Cancel is like 200C. So the way we're going to do things, because again, also we're using a drill neck, and because I'm using Puncture for both AoE and single target, getting additional arrow drill neck isn't that mandatory. It's obviously very nice quality of life, it makes the build better, but it isn't needed. I'm going to have a second Death's Opus and a second drill neck in Weapon Swap. The reason why I'm doing this, because I'm planning it in the way that I am, I can rely on the +2 additional arrows from the Death's Opus plus LMP for my AoE clear. You can run GMP for AoE clear if you feel like you want to. So my links for AoE is Puncture, Added Chaos, Crit Strikes, Pierce, then LMP or GMP if you want to. Slower Proj, then Multi or Void Manipulation if you get a 6 link. Then you, for single target, you Weapon Swap to Puncture or Barrage. I'm going to try using Puncture for everything because again, of all this increased duration, super long poisons, Added Chaos, Crit Strikes, Pierce, Slower Proj, then Crit Multi or Void Manipulation. Much like in explosive arrow builds, it's very common for every explosive arrow build, just like, I've got 2 5-link cooldowns or 6-link cooldowns or whatever. Weapon Swap, one of them has GMP in it, one of them doesn't. It's the exact same principle. They all use rearguard quithers. We're using drill necks. Drill necks are cheap at the moment. Because we're doing it this way, we don't need to worry too much about chasing, you know, perfect gear with insane corruptions everywhere. It gives us much, much tighter links. It makes running a Combs Heart very manageable. Now, one thing that this setup is dependent on, it is dependent on getting a corrupted pair of Snakebite gloves with either Temp Chains Curse on hit or Vulnerability Curse on hit. That is the one like caveat in this whole sort of package. Until you can afford a Combs Heart, until you can afford a corrupted Snakebite, or you get lucky and you corrupt it yourself, which is what I'll be planning to do. They're very cheap, they're only a couple of chaos to buy them. I'll be running a Belly of the Beast with a Frenzy Curse on hit set up in the Belly of the Beast. So, your links are Wither, Spell Totem, Fast Casting, and then Blink Arrow. It would be nice to have increased duration on the Wither, but we just can't fit it in because of the way we're doing other things. Then Cast on Damage Taken level 1 with an Immortal Cool. Again, this is a very tight package. We are using a Combs. Then Haste and Arctic Armor are our 2 auras. Then BloodRage, Vaal Haste, Vaal Grace, and increased duration. The reason why I'm running Vaal Grace instead of Vaal Lightning Trap or a Golem, one, I hate Golems. They get you killed in chain maps. They're very frustrating. They die 24/7, or you need to link them to Cast on Damage Taken setup, in which case you then have an issue with high level Cast on Damage Takens. It's just kind of sloppy. I despise Golems. If you like Golems, fit it in, sub out one of these things. Vaal Lightning Trap is something I've used a lot, like a lot this league. And I love Vaal Lightning Trap. I think it's amazing, very powerful skill. I'm going to try replacing it with Vaal Grace, because we have all of this insane skill effect duration in the tree and just across my character. It shouldn't be too difficult to have a clear seed where I can pretty much maintain perma, Vaal Haste, and Vaal Grace. I've done this in the past on my Null's Incarnation character, which had similar levels of skill effect duration, and maintaining both of them at the same time was incredibly easy. The thing which is so powerful about this is this basically gives you dodge cap. A level 20 Vaal Grace gives you 34% dodge attacks, 34% dodge spells. We have phase acro and acro, so we'd have 74% chance of dodge attacks and 64% spell dodge while it's active, and we would have this basically 100% uptime if your clear is good enough. If we decide that we don't like it, or we feel like it's overkill or greed, then we'll just take this out and put Vaal Lightning Trap back in. Really, really basic. From this setup, we get a mix of insane levels of defense through the Combs Heart. We have a very high HP pool. If you look back at the tree, it's 190% maximum life with 3 jewels. That's another 21% max life. And this is basically the explosive arrow of poison builds. We're using the exact same strategies, the exact same setups, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. Screw Queen of the Forest. We don't need to move super quick. We will already move quick enough from just having Haste as a main aura. We're not focusing on Grace that much. Because we're going to have such a HP pool, we'll have a much stronger form of mitigation. Just to quickly summarize, with all of the bow builds I've played this league, and I've basically only played bow builds this league. There have been 2 builds this league which haven't been bow builds. I played a also Herald character, and I played a sweep character because I'm a masochist. Now, The problem you have with all evasion builds, and this also goes to block builds, basically avoidance-based HP builds, this is why CI is so popular, you will die to one-shots or incredible spike damage unless you have ridiculous amounts of leech. Even if you have ridiculous amounts of leech, that is worthless unless you have a high enough HP pool that you won't get straight one-shot. I've been saying, oh, you want like 6k HP, oh, you want like 6.5k HP. The only character I've truly felt safe on this league, like safe, has been my Explosive Arrow character, which was floating around 8k life. This build will be able to achieve that level of life. This will be safe, it will have dodge cap. The problem with using Kintsugi, the problem with using Lightning Coil, the problem with using Perfect Form, the problem with using Queen of Thorns, the problem with all of these just very powerful chess pieces, and they are very, very powerful chess pieces, is they don't do enough. Lightning Coil used to be the meta pick. There's too much elemental damage in the game that Lightning Coil doesn't do enough. Kintsugi is very powerful, however, you can't control what hits you. If you take a series of rapid attacks, like my character in Ublab with the aerial barrage, if you take 2 of those in a row, you're dead. You only get mitigation on the first one. It's not consistent enough. A little white monkey could slap you, knocks off your 20%, and then you take 1 big hit, you're dead. Not good enough. Perfect Form, it saves you points on the tree, but doesn't give you raw mitigation. The only way you can seriously play dodge builds is if you're being life-based, and if you're like me, you prefer playing life to CI, you just need to tough through it and use either Belly of the Beast or a Comb's Heart. It is realistically the only way this league that you're going to make stuff work. Even if you're like a champion and all this crazy stuff and you're getting like 26% just flat damage mitigation, you're always having a Basalt up, you're always having a Taste of Hate up, you just need to stack raw effective HP. Screw mitigation. Dodges are mitigation. We're just going HP. Sod everything else. One other quick thing to comment before I end up the video here. Your best in slot flask of this build, I'm going to try and achieve enough crit chance that I can drop the diamond flasks. Diamond flasks are amazing with roughly 69-70% crit. A diamond flask effectively puts you at crit cap. People have done maths on it. I trust the maths. It makes sense. Roughly, just tell me if I'm wrong. But it uses up a slot. It's powerful. It gives you insane offense through it capping out your crit, but it uses up a slot. Also, having crit cap is nice, but we actually, funnily enough, we don't want our crit like too high, otherwise Unstable Infusion becomes useless and we never generate power charges. If we can get our crits to like high 80% without power charges, like if we can get to, you know, high 70, maybe low 80 without power charges, then that's enough that we'll somewhat be able to keep our power charges up reliably-ish, and that will then push us up to the high levels. If we just go like full out with Diamond Fast and everything, we'll be very lucky to ever maintain our power charges unless we're using wonky Orb of Storm setups, which is great if you're boss farming, but not so great for general map clear, and it just becomes much more frustrating, at which point you then need to try and fit Assassin's Mark into the build if you want to use power charges as a tool. It then makes Deadly Infusion weaker, etc, etc, etc. Basically, I'm going to try and drop the Diamond Flask. The Quartz Flask I'm just using for leveling, very underrated flask. If you roll Alchemist on it, it gives you 12.5% dodge and spell dodge. Pretty good. But we're not using that endgame. Endgame flask is Life Flask, Quicksilver, a Sin's Rebirth Stibnite Flask, which gives Unholy Might, which gives Fizz as extra chaos, which is just OP. Then you use in its Xeris Promise here. Its Xeris Promise gives you more extra flat chaos. And then here you would run either a Basalt Flask or a Taste of Hate ideally. The one awkward thing about this setup is if you run that many unique flasks, you become very starved on stuff like remove freeze, remove bleed, remove curses, remove shock, etc, etc. You basically end up with the bare minimum setup of, if you're doing the 3 unique flasks, of you have remove freeze on your life flask, and then you have bleed removal on your Quicksilver, and you just sort of have to wing it. Running a Basalt on there makes it much easier in the fact that, you know, you get to spread out. You can then keep movement speed on your Quicksilver if you want to. You can put shock immunity, curse immunity on there, so on and so forth. Anyway, this video is stretching on a bit, so I'm going to end it there. One other quick thing, it might take me another 2 days or so to get this character truly into maps. I am still playing WoW, and the new raid tiers just come out today, so, you know, tonight I will be raiding all night, so, you know, that will take away from my PoE time, but I'll try and get this character up and keep you guys updated. I'm Taki. Don't run away. Just saying hello. This is a cat. Say hello. It's been a while. She does miss you. We'll be back to streaming soon. Bye-bye.